I always thought that the quiet ones were the easiest to understand. You could almost read their silences like lines in a poem. Predictable, gentle, rhythmic. But I was wrong. So wrong. In fact, that the boy I thought I had pegged in a single glance ended up flipping my entire sense of understanding upside down. My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 44, a mother, a real estate agent, and a woman who has spent the last decade and a half walking on eggshells, mostly of my own making. Life with my son Mason has been the single most rewarding, chaotic, humbling experience. He's 17 now, towering over me with that golden energy only teenage boys carry. He plays high school baseball third base, and he's good. I mean really good. Which brings me to the one I didn't understand. Eli Brooks. Eli transferred to Mason's school last spring, halfway through the baseball season. His father had passed suddenly, and he and his mom moved to our district to be closer to her sister. He was quiet, reserved, always watching but rarely speaking unless spoken to. The coach stuck him in as a catcher after 2 practices. The boy had reflexes like a machine and arms like a linebacker. But more than that, he had a weight about him. Not physically, though he was tall and solid, but something in his eyes. A kind of heaviness that made you want to ask if he was okay, and also made you hesitate, like you weren't sure he'd welcome the question. The first time I met him was at a team dinner I hosted at our place. The boys had come over after a game. Pizza boxes stacked to the ceiling, loud music, and that special brand of sweaty chaos only teenage boys bring into a room. Eli was the last to walk in. He held the screen door open like it might fall apart in his hands. He gave me a small smile when I greeted him and whispered, "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Carter," before disappearing into the background. I noticed him, though. The way he moved with care, never pushing his way into the group. The way he always looked for a space to exist in without crowding anyone else. He was different. Over time, he started spending more time with Mason, coming over after practice, staying late to study or watch games. At first, I didn't think anything of it. But then, one afternoon while Mason was upstairs grabbing something from his room, Eli stayed behind in the kitchen with me. I was wiping the counter when I heard him ask softly, "Do you need help with that?" I looked up, surprised.
"No, sweetie."
"You're a guest." He shrugged. "Doesn't mean I can't help." That was the first real conversation we had, and it opened the door to others, small, hesitant, but meaningful. He started to linger more often. Sometimes, even after Mason had left the room. I began to learn the small things about him. That he liked his coffee too sweet. That he couldn't stand loud chewing. That he still carried a picture of his dad in his wallet and checked it before every game. It was innocent. At first. Until the night it wasn't. It was late fall. The season had ended, and Mason had gone out to a friend's birthday party. I had just gotten home from showing a house, still in my heels and tired as anything, when I saw a familiar truck parked out front. Eli was sitting on the porch step, his elbows resting on his knees, head bowed. My heart skipped. I walked up slowly. "Eli? Everything okay?" He looked up at me with those dark eyes, red-rimmed from either crying or exhaustion, and forced a small smile. I didn't know where else to go. "Come inside," I said without thinking. He followed, quiet as ever. I made us tea and sat across from him in the kitchen, trying to read him. "I got into an argument with my mom," he said eventually, swirling his spoon slowly in his mug. "She said I needed to toughen up. Said my dad would be disappointed if he saw me now." I felt something crack inside me. "Eli, I'm sure that's not true. You're one of the strongest kids I know." He smiled faintly, but didn't say anything. Then came the part that changed everything. I got up to grab him a blanket because it was chilly, and he followed me into the hallway. I went to the closet, reached for the thick navy throw on the top shelf, but it slipped. Too wide, too heavy. Eli stepped in close behind me, arms lifting to help. And in that moment, everything around us slowed. We both reached for the same corner. Our hands brushed. My breath caught. And then he froze completely still, like he was afraid to move. I turned, suddenly too aware of how close we were. The hallway felt tighter than it was. The silence between us heavier. "It's okay," I said quietly, not knowing what I meant. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't be here." He looked down. And for the first time, I realized how broken he really felt. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about anything physical. He was just aching to be seen, to be safe, to not have to carry the weight of the world in his teenage shoulders. Eli, I said softly, it's okay to not be okay. You're allowed to feel what you feel. He nodded once, blinking fast. I placed the blanket in his hands and said, you can stay in the guest room tonight if you want.
He did.
Nothing happened, nothing inappropriate.
But the air had changed.
The next morning, I found him in the kitchen again, trying to fix the garbage disposal. I couldn't help but smile at the sight of him, this boy trying so hard to carry too much. It's jammed, he said. I think something thick is stuck inside. He looked up and laughed at the irony of it. I tried to get it out with a butter knife, but it wouldn't budge. You tried again, though, I said, stepping beside him. That's what matters. And I wasn't just talking about the disposal. From that day on, things shifted quietly. He didn't sleep over again, but he visited more. Always respectful. Always gentle. But our bond deepened into something strange and complicated. I began to worry. Not because of him, but because of how easily I'd let him into the emotional corners of my life. One evening, after a wintry game under gray skies, he stayed behind while the others cleared out. I brought him a cup of cocoa, and we sat on the bleachers in silence. He finally spoke. I know this looks weird. Me always being here. I didn't interrupt. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I like who I am when I'm here. That hit me like a truck. We never crossed a line, not once. But there were moments so emotionally intimate they almost felt like more. It was dangerous. Not because anything happened, but because so much could have if I'd let it. And that night I found him on the porch. I replayed it 100 times. His hand near mine. His breath brushing my neck. The way we both froze. The thick air. The moment that nearly shifted everything. But he was just a boy. And I was just a woman who'd been too lonely for too long. In the end, life moved forward. He graduated. Got a scholarship. Moved to Florida. Mason never knew the details. Only that Eli had become like family for a while. I told myself that was all it ever was. That letting him try again with the garbage disposal was the only thing I ever allowed. But deep down, I knew that Eli had taught me something I hadn't felt in years. That connection doesn't always come in the form you expect. Sometimes it sneaks in through the cracks in your heart, through silences, through unspoken grief, through the simple act of letting someone try, even when the part they're trying to fix doesn't fit right away. And I let him try. Just once. And maybe that was enough.